There's a secret that mystics from every tradition have known, but that modern humanity has forgotten. A secret about what happens when two people who have already become whole, who have already awakened to their own essence, finally cross paths. And when that happens, the reality surrounding these two people literally transforms. I'm talking about a union so powerful that ancient cultures described it as the meeting of incarnated gods. I'm talking about what truly happens when two awakened souls meet. Carl Jung dedicated a great part of his life to studying the deepest encounters between human beings, those that touch layers of the psyche that are rarely accessed. And what he discovered goes far beyond what conventional psychology can explain. He realized that certain human encounters carry an archetypal quality, a resonance that seems to come from a dimension much deeper than everyday reality. And when these two awakened souls meet, something extraordinary happens. Something that changes not only their lives, but literally the field of possibilities around them. Today, I'm going to reveal exactly what happens when two awakened souls meet. You'll understand why this type of union is completely different from any other kind of relationship, and more importantly, I'm going to show you how this can be one of the most significant and transformative experiences a human being can live. Watch until the end, because I'm going to share something that can completely change your understanding of connection, purpose, and the true meaning of union between two people. And if these words are resonating with something deep within you, leave in the comments "I recognize," so that I know this message landed where it needed to land. Before understanding what truly happens when two awakened souls meet, we need to face a simple truth that almost no one wants to admit. Most relationships are born from a place of lack. Not because people are weak, but because we've all been conditioned to believe that love is some kind of emotional crutch, something that comes to save us, complete us, fill us, or fix what we can't resolve on our own. That's why so many connections begin with the feeling of, finally I found someone who will heal my emptiness. And this is exactly where the concept of twin flames has been profoundly distorted over time. The true concept of twin flames never had anything to do with two broken halves desperately trying to fit together. It's not about wounded souls wandering the world searching for someone who will save, complete, or give meaning. That romantic and melodramatic version is modern and profoundly misguided. In reality, a twin flame is about something much deeper. A single flame manifested in two different bodies, living distinct experiences, maturing at their own pace, until one day, if they're ready, they can choose to reunite. But here's the crucial piece that almost everyone misses. This reunion can only happen authentically and transformatively when both parts of that flame have already done the work of becoming whole individually. Because the union of twin flames isn't about filling what's missing. It's about amplifying what already exists. It's not about healing each other's wounds. It's about two fully awakened consciousnesses recognizing their common origin and choosing to expand together. When you look at the history of spiritual traditions, you find accounts of pairs who embodied exactly this dynamic. In Native American teachings, the concept of the sacred hoop represented two complete beings whose union created harmony and balance far greater than either could manifest alone. In Western mystical traditions, the alchemical marriage described by figures like Carl Jung himself represented the union of two whole individuals, creating something exponentially more powerful than the sum of their parts. These examples are something our modern culture has almost completely lost. The understanding that two whole people, two awakened consciousnesses, when they unite consciously, create a field of manifestation exponentially more powerful than either could create alone. And this isn't just esoteric philosophy or vague mysticism. It's something that can be experienced, lived, and manifested in very practical and tangible ways. But to understand how this works, we first need to understand what it truly means to be an awakened soul. Because this expression has been so diluted, so trivialized in personal development and modern spirituality circles, that it has almost completely lost its true meaning. A genuinely awakened soul can be said of someone who has gone through what could be called a conscious death and rebirth. It's someone who has faced their own deepest shadows and didn't look away. It's someone who was shattered by life's circumstances and consciously chose to rebuild themselves in a more authentic, more aligned, more true way. It's someone who is no longer living on autopilot, unconsciously reacting to life's triggers based on patterns picked up in childhood. An awakened soul has developed what Jung called consciousness. Not the superficial consciousness of being awake versus being asleep, but the deep consciousness of self. Awareness of one's own unconscious patterns, Awareness of how one's emotional wounds influence one's choices and behaviors. Awareness that you are the creator of your life experience, not a passive victim of circumstances or other people. When a person goes through this awakening process, something fundamental shifts in how they exist in the world. They stop wearing social masks, stop playing roles they learned they should perform, stop hiding parts of themselves considered unacceptable or inconvenient by society. They simply become authentically themselves, with all the contradictions, imperfections, and unique quirks that make them human. And when you become genuinely yourself, when you stop performing and molding yourself to please or be accepted, you begin to emit a completely different frequency. It's as if you finally tune into the right radio station after years of hearing only static and interference. You transmit a clear, coherent, authentic signal, and this signal can be picked up by other people operating on the same frequency of authenticity and conscious presence. This is how awakened souls recognize each other, not through spiritual credentials or external demonstrations of elevated consciousness, but through a resonance that happens at a level much deeper than words or appearances. It's a feeling of inexplicable familiarity, a surprising ease in communication, a mutual understanding that doesn't need a lot of explanation. It's as if you speak the same invisible language that most people around you simply cannot comprehend. Now let's get to what truly happens when two genuinely awakened souls meet and consciously choose to explore what can emerge from this connection. And buckle up, because it's something that will challenge everything you've learned about relationships, love, and partnership. The first thing that happens when two awakened souls meet is the complete absence of emotional games. There's no subtle manipulation, no attempts to control or mold the other to meet unspoken expectations. None of those infantile emotional tests so common in conventional relationships. No playing hard to get to spark interest or faking indifference when there's actually attraction. Because awakened souls have already been through enough relationships based on these exhausting dynamics. They've recognized that these games are just defensive strategies of the wounded ego trying to protect itself from rejection and abandonment. And having done the work of healing, or at least bringing these wounds to consciousness, they simply no longer have the energy or interest to perpetuate these destructive and childish patterns. Instead, what emerges is direct, honest, vulnerable communication. If there's interest, it's expressed clearly. If there's discomfort with something, it's communicated without beating around the bush. If there's a need for space, this is verbalized openly, instead of being manifested through passive-aggressive distancing. This radical transparency can be jarring at first, especially because we live in a culture where almost everyone still operates through masks, indirect strategies, and coded communication. But this direct honesty creates a quality of trust that's practically impossible in game-based relationships. It creates genuine trust, not based on empty promises or formal commitments, but based on the consistent experience that each person is exactly who they say they are. There are no hidden versions waiting to emerge when the defenses drop. What you see is genuinely what exists. The second thing that happens is a deep acceptance of each other's imperfections and shadows. Awakened souls have already made peace with their own flaws, limitations, and shadow areas. They're no longer trying to project an image of spiritual perfection to the world. They've already integrated enough of their shadows to recognize that imperfection isn't something to be hidden or ashamed of, but simply part of the human experience. Therefore, when they meet another person operating at the same level of authenticity, there's no need for idealization, no need to put the other on an impossible pedestal to maintain. They see the other as a complete human being, with light and shadow, with admirable qualities and challenging aspects. And this realistic view doesn't diminish the love or respect. In fact, it deepens it tremendously, because it's much easier to love an idealized image created by imagination than to love a real person with all their complexities and contradictions. When you can see someone exactly as they are, without filters or illusions, and still choose to honor and value them, you're experiencing a much more mature, stable, and sustainable form of love. This acceptance of imperfections doesn't mean passive tolerance of destructive behaviors or absence of healthy boundaries. Awakened souls have clarity about what is acceptable and what isn't in their relationships. But they can establish these boundaries without heavy moral judgment, without turning differences into defects, without needing to make the other wrong to justify their own needs and preferences. There's space for both people to be fully human, with all the contradictions that implies. The third manifestation is an extraordinary capacity to hold paradoxical tensions without trying to resolve them prematurely. Awakened souls understand deeply that human beings are complex and contradictory, that it's perfectly possible to love someone deeply and still need regular space for oneself, that it's possible to be committed to a relationship and simultaneously maintain a strong sense of individuality, that it's possible to feel momentary frustration or anger towards someone without that threatening the fundamental love that exists between you. This capacity to embrace paradoxes without collapsing into extreme polarizations creates extraordinary relational elasticity. The relationship can expand and contract naturally, according to each person's needs at different moments, without each movement being interpreted as threat or abandonment. There's deep trust that the connection is solid enough to sustain these natural variations in the degree of closeness and intensity. There's no panic when one needs to pull back temporarily. No drama when individual rhythms aren't perfectly synchronized. The fourth quality is the complete absence of competition. In conventional relationships, even when it's not conscious or openly admitted, there's frequently a subtle dynamic of competition. Who is more successful? Who has more power in the relationship? Who sacrificed more? Who is more right? Who is more spiritually evolved? These unconscious comparisons slowly poison the possibility of true partnership and mutual celebration. But when two awakened souls meet, each has already developed such a solid sense of their own intrinsic worth that there's simply no need to compare or compete with the other. One's success doesn't threaten the other. In fact, it's celebrated genuinely, without disguised envy or hidden resentment. The admirable qualities of the other aren't seen as things you lack, but as unique expressions of human potential that enrich your own experience simply by being close. This absence of competition creates space for something extremely rare in relationships: genuine and unfeigned joy with the other's growth and fulfillment, even when that means they're shining more brightly than you at a given moment or life area. There's deep understanding that you're not in a race against each other, but navigating unique parallel journeys that occasionally intertwine in beautiful and mutually enriching ways. The fifth characteristic is the presence of genuine autonomy within the connection. This is perhaps the most difficult aspect to understand for people still operating from relational models based on emotional fusion or codependency. Awakened souls don't need to be together constantly to feel the connection. They don't need obligatory daily contact to feel secure in the relationship. They don't interpret the other's natural desire for alone time as personal rejection or lack of love, because each has already developed the capacity to be full and satisfied with themselves. Each has cultivated a rich life, with personal purposes, interests, and relationships that don't depend on the other's constant presence to have meaning and value. And when they choose to be together, that choice comes from genuine desire, not neurotic need. It comes from recognition that the other's presence adds valuable quality to the experience, not from fear that the other's absence will create unbearable emptiness. This autonomy doesn't mean cold emotional distance or indifferent detachment. It means healthy interdependence instead of pathological dependency. It means being able to support each other when necessary, without losing the capacity to sustain oneself individually when life requires it. It means creating a strong sense of we without destroying the two whole I's that form that we. It's a delicate dance between closeness and space, between union and individuality, that most relationships never manage to find. The sixth manifestation is a quality of presence that transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. When two genuinely awakened people are together, there's real full presence. They're not physically present while mentally absent, lost in thoughts about the future or ruminations about the past. They're truly there, in that specific moment, totally available to each other without constant internal distractions. This total presence creates a depth of intimacy that goes far beyond physical connection. It creates moments of true communion where words become almost unnecessary because there's tacit understanding flowing between you. There's deep listening, not just to the sounds coming out of the mouth, but to the underlying emotions, the unverbalized needs, the subtle meanings between the lines and in the silences. It's as if you can communicate through layers that most people never access in their daily interactions. And paradoxically, this capacity to be totally present in moments of connection also allows each to completely let go when they're apart. There's no unresolved emotional residue generating anxiety. No incomplete conversations creating background tension. No misunderstandings accumulating in silence, slowly poisoning the relationship. Each encounter is lived fully, allowing the subsequent separation to be equally full and free from anxious attachment. The seventh quality is perhaps the most revolutionary of all, a form of love that transcends need. The overwhelming majority of human relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendship, are fundamentally based on mutual need. I need you to validate me because I can't validate myself. You need me to make you feel safe because you haven't developed inner security. I need you to complete me because I feel incomplete alone. You need me to save you because you haven't learned to save yourself. But awakened souls have already done the hard work of filling their own inner existential voids. They've already learned to validate themselves without depending on constant external approval. They've already developed robust inner security. They've already become essentially whole. Therefore, when they meet another awakened soul, what emerges between them isn't based on filling desperate lacks, but on sharing cultivated abundances. It's a love that says, I don't need you to feel complete or for my life to have value, but I consciously choose to have you in my life because your presence amplifies my natural joy, expands my perspective, challenges me to grow in ways that alone I might not choose. It's a love that comes from overflow and abundance, not from scarcity and emptiness. It's a love that naturally gives instead of constantly demanding. It's a love that liberates instead of imprisoning with suffocating expectations and unprocessed emotional needs. And perhaps this is the most disconcerting aspect for people accustomed to conventional relational dynamics. This type of mature love doesn't need dramatic eternal promises to exist fully. It doesn't need rigid contractual guarantees. It doesn't need inflexible fixed definitions about exactly how the distant future must be. It exists fully in the present, moment by moment, constantly renewing itself through the conscious and free choice of both parties to continue cultivating, nurturing, and honoring the connection. The eighth manifestation is a deep understanding that this connection doesn't exist primarily to satisfy personal emotional needs, but to serve something significantly greater than both individually. Awakened souls recognize intuitively that truly meaningful encounters between human beings aren't completely random cosmic accidents. There's purpose and meaning operating, even when that purpose isn't immediately obvious or clearly defined from the start. When two such people meet and choose to unite their lives in some way, they frequently discover that together they can create, manifest, contribute, impact in ways that alone would be impossible or infinitely more difficult. Not because one magically completes what the other lacks, but because two consciousnesses operating in high frequency and coherence create an amplified energy field where possibilities multiply exponentially and paths previously completely invisible suddenly become evident and accessible. This awareness of shared purpose lifts the relationship out of the purely personal, emotional, and egoic realm and elevates it to something that naturally serves the greater good. Not in a grandiose, inflated, or arrogant way, but in a humble, practical, and genuine way. It can be creating art that touches and transforms other people. It can be building projects or initiatives that benefit communities. It can simply be modeling for others around them a radically different, more conscious, healthier, and more liberating way of relating. The ninth characteristic is an extraordinary capacity to navigate conflicts and tensions when they inevitably arise. Because here's a truth that needs to be said with total clarity. The meeting between two awakened souls isn't magically exempt from challenges, tensions, or conflicts. It's not a relationship where everything flows perfectly all the time without any friction or difficulty. That romantic fantasy needs to be completely deconstructed. In fact, precisely because both people are so authentically themselves, so whole and individualized, there will be inevitable moments of clash between different needs, conflicting perspectives, incompatible preferences, desynchronized rhythms. The fundamental difference isn't in the magical absence of conflict, but in the radically different way conflict is navigated and processed. Instead of automatically attacking, defending, blaming, victimizing, or fleeing, awakened souls manage to remain curious and open even in the acute discomfort of conflict. They manage to ask themselves powerful questions. What is this specific conflict revealing about me that I still need to look at honestly? What is being activated in my old wounds that deserves conscious attention and healing? How can I communicate my legitimate needs clearly without making the other fundamentally wrong? How can I honor my truth while simultaneously respecting the equally valid truth of the other? This mature and conscious approach transforms conflicts from potentially destructive to genuinely constructive, from threats to the relationship's stability to precious opportunities for deepening and mutual understanding. Each friction becomes a valuable chance for greater understanding. Each tension becomes an invitation for more authentic vulnerability and true intimacy. The 10th quality is a paradoxical freedom that exists within conscious commitment. When two awakened souls choose to commit to each other in some way, that commitment doesn't come from fear of losing, doesn't come from a possessive attempt to control, doesn't come from desperate need for external emotional security. It comes from deep recognition of the connection's intrinsic value and conscious and free choice to prioritize it consistently. But this mature commitment doesn't imprison or suffocate. It doesn't demand that each person sacrifice their unique individuality, their distinct personal dreams, their particular evolutionary journey. In fact, the true commitment between awakened souls is commitment to continuous mutual growth, with genuine support for each other's evolution, even when that evolution temporarily leads in seemingly different or diverging directions. There's deep trust that if the connection is genuine and rooted in something real, it will naturally survive periods of physical distance, significant changes in external circumstances, profound personal transformations that each must inevitably go through on their individual journey. And if eventually life paths separate completely and definitively, there's deep and genuine gratitude for the time shared instead of bitterness, resentment, or feeling of betrayal over the ending. The 11th manifestation is a developed capacity to see and honor the sacred in the other. Not necessarily in the formal religious or dogmatic sense, but in the deep sense of recognizing that each human being is an absolutely unique expression of universal consciousness, of the infinite creative intelligence that permeates all manifested existence. Awakened souls have naturally developed a fundamental reverence for life in all its varied forms, and this extends naturally and intensely to the people with whom they choose to relate intimately. This deep reverence isn't blind idealized worship or unrealistic romanticization. It's sober and deep recognition that you are literally in the presence of a mystery as vast and unfathomable as the entire cosmos, somehow compacted and manifested in an individual human body with all its fascinating particularities and inevitable limitations. It's the rare capacity to see beyond the superficial personality and social masks, and touch something more fundamental, more essential, more true that inhabits each person beneath the constructed layers. When you can see and honor the sacred in the other, and the other can do the same with you reciprocally, something profoundly sacred emerges naturally in the space between you. Not sacred in the formal religious and ritualistic sense, but sacred in the sense of deeply respectful, extremely careful, genuinely reverent. There's living awareness that what exists between you is precious, rare, worthy of being consciously protected and carefully cultivated with consistent attention. The 12th characteristic is a measurable increase in synchronicities that begins to operate when two awakened souls unite consciously in shared purpose. Because here's something that conventional materialistic science cannot adequately explain, but that any spiritually sensitive and attentive person has already experienced repeatedly. When two consciousnesses align deeply and genuinely, they create a dramatically amplified field of possibility that literally attracts remarkable synchronicities, meaning-laden coincidences, completely unexpected opportunities. It's as if the universe itself recognizes this conscious union as something valuable for collective evolution, and begins to actively conspire in its favor in subtle but completely undeniable ways for those paying attention. The right people appear at exactly the right moment. Necessary resources manifest precisely when they're most needed. Doors that seemed permanently closed open seemingly without excessive effort. Elegant solutions to complex problems emerge from completely unexpected and unlikely directions. This isn't naive magical thinking or self-induced illusion. It's experience-based recognition that consciousness and material reality are profoundly intertwined in ways that our current materialistic physics is only just beginning timidly to understand and accept. And when two highly coherent, aligned, and awakened consciousnesses unite intentionally, they create a powerful energetic vortex that affects the physical reality around them in practical, measurable, and tangible ways. The 13th quality is a remarkable absence of anxious hurry. Awakened souls understand deeply through lived experience that everything in life has its natural organic time of development and unfolding. There's no neurotic urgency to rigidly define the relationship immediately, to force premature commitments before they're naturally mature, to artificially rush stages that need to unfold organically at their own unique pace. There's genuine trust in life's natural process. There's cultivated patience with the organic unfolding of things at the right time. This absence of anxious hurry doesn't mean inert passivity or lack of clear intention. It means being actively present and engaged while simultaneously graciously allowing things to evolve and develop at their own natural rhythm, without forcing or artificially manipulating. It's like a truly experienced and wise gardener who knows intuitively when to plant the seeds, when to water carefully, when to prune strategically, but also knows deeply that they can't make the plant grow faster simply by anxiously pulling on its tender stems. There's deep respect for natural processes and trust that the right time always comes when internal and external conditions are aligned. And finally, the 14th powerful manifestation is a deep and constant gratitude for the very existence of the connection, completely independent of how long it lasts or in what specific form it manifests over time. Awakened souls simply don't take truly meaningful encounters for granted or as acquired rights. They fully recognize the statistical rarity, the absolute preciousness of finding another person genuinely operating at the same elevated level of consciousness, authenticity, and presence. There's clear and constant recognition that even if the relationship doesn't last forever, even if eventually life paths separate completely for reasons that only time will reveal, the profound impact of the connection remains forever. You have been fundamentally transformed by knowing and relating with this person. Your life has been immensely enriched by having them in it, even if temporarily. Something essential in you awakened or expanded significantly through the conscious mirror they became for you. And this deep gratitude isn't just retrospective, something that only appears nostalgically after the relationship ends. It's present, alive, actively breathed in each shared moment. It's constant and appreciative awareness that this specific moment, this particular conversation, this touch, this shared comfortable silence is absolutely precious exactly because it's transitory and impermanent, because there are no absolute guarantees about tomorrow, because everything in life can change drastically from one moment to another. If you recognized your own lived experience in these words, if you felt something resonating deeply in you while I described these qualities and manifestations, then it's quite possible that you've already experienced or are preparing to experience soon this rare and transformative type of encounter between genuinely awakened souls. And if this hasn't happened concretely in your life yet, perhaps this is precisely the moment to look with radical honesty inward and ask yourself, have I truly done the deep and often painful inner work necessary to be genuinely ready for this type of connection? Because here's the final and fundamental truth that needs to be understood and integrated. You don't meet an awakened soul when you're desperately searching for someone external to complete you or save you from yourself. You meet an awakened soul when you yourself have become essentially whole, when you've made peace with your inevitable existential solitude, when you've developed a full, rich, and meaningful life that doesn't fundamentally depend on another person to have value, purpose, or joy. The true meeting between two awakened souls doesn't arise from lack or neediness. It arises from cultivated fullness. They don't approach desperately to fill existential voids, heal old wounds, or complete what fundamentally lacks in them. They approach because they recognize the same essential flame living consciously in two distinct physical bodies. There's no neurotic dependency, no desperate emotional neediness. There's natural resonance. There's conscious presence. There's emotional and spiritual maturity. When two souls meet consciously like this, they don't need to be together to feel complete, but they genuinely desire to be. They don't magically complete each other, but they deeply mirror each other. They don't possessively imprison each other, but they mutually amplify each other. And it's precisely this conscious freedom and this absence of desperate need that forms the most powerful and stable force of joint manifestation and creation. Not because one miraculously saves the other, but because two whole consciousnesses, aligned, operating in high coherence, create a reality field exponentially stronger, more impactful, more transformative than any isolated dream or vision could ever create. Thus, genuinely awakened love, or the conscious reunion of this one divided flame, isn't a desperate quest for someone magical who will heal your life and solve your problems. It's the silent but profound celebration of two presences who recognize each other. It's the sacred space where consciousness grows and expands naturally. It's the union that profoundly transforms not because it completes what's missing, but because it exponentially expands what already exists. If you're on this awakening path and want to deepen this inner work, I've created 2 ebooks that will guide you in this process. The first is 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung, a practical guide with exercises to integrate your shadow and develop authentic presence. The second is The Soul's Survival Manual, with strategies to navigate the most challenging moments of this journey. The links are in the first pinned comment. Write in the comments, "My awakened soul," if you felt this message was for you. And remember, only a small percentage of humanity will experience the true meeting between two awakened souls, not because it's impossible, but because it requires inner work that few are willing to do. If you're on this path, honor your journey and trust the process. If you made it this far, thank you for your presence. I'll see you in the next video.